Jeffrey? Okay, Tov, everyone. The Parsha of Noah has bookends to it. By this, I mean, it begins with the description of one of the great tragedies in human history, the great flood that destroys the civilization of its time. And it concludes with the story of the Tower of Babel and of the dispersal of the human race over the face of the globe, and the introduction of the diversity of language. Those are the two corners, so to speak, of the Parsha this week. In between, the Torah doesn't tell us much. It tells us about people, about generations. In Avot, in Pirkei Avot, it says, Asara Dorot Me'odom Vad Noach. There were 10 generations from original Odom till Noach, till the great flood. The Kulam Achisim Uboim, and each was worse than the other. So that finally the flood was brought upon the destroyed civilization. Then it says, Asara Doros, Menoach v'Yad Avraham. 10 generations from Noach to Avraham. It does not describe what their crime was, if what was involved. It just says, Ad shebo Avraham Avinu v'notal schar kulom. Avraham Avinu came and he cleaned the table, so to speak. He took all of the chips that were there, and he took the reward of all of them. So the Meforshim attempt to give us some sort of picture of each one is, so to speak, worse than the other one. They built evil upon evil. Batimole Oretz Chomos was a lawless civilization. There were no moral strictures. Chazal say even the animal world fell apart. It's an interesting observation, by the way, that the animal world is also affected by the human part of it, so to speak. That has to do with the difference of opinion, whether in the Messianic era. So the Navi Yeshayahu says, the Gor Zeiv im Keves, the Arika Bokor Yochal Tevet, that the animals will no longer be carnivorous. They won't eat each other up. because of the fact that in the Messianic era, human beings will be different. The other opinion is, and that's the opinion of the Rambam, is that this is merely an allegorical statement. In the Messianic era, the lions will continue to eat antelopes. And that the Navi is saying that there will not be unwarranted violence or murder, but olam k'minhago noeg, that things will be the same. They're not going to change. So the Rambam obviously is of the opinion that human behavior does not influence how animals behave. So the human beings won't make war anymore. Lo yisa goy al goy cherev, lo yilmedu od milchama. That won't be, but that the lion and the lamb will lie down together. The Rambam holds you'll have lamb chops, that's all. So there's this difference of opinion as to how human behavior affects the animal world or the environment. If you want to stretch it, I don't know if you do, but that's part of the debate that exists today. Does human behavior affect climate? Or is climate beyond our control? And no matter what we do or don't do, it doesn't make a difference. The weather goes according to its own patterns and nature. And whether we drive automobiles or fly airplanes makes no difference. But looking back at the 10 generations from Adam to Noah, we see the crimes that were committed. We see that they became pagans. The Rambam phrases it, Bedoro shel Enosh Tohu. In the generation of Enosh, they made a great mistake. The mistake was that they took the creations of God to be gods. So they elevated the sun, the moon, etc., to the status of gods instead of being the creatures that they actually were. From that, there flowed all sorts of other crimes. Powerful men took whatever women they wanted. People stole from each other. People murdered each other. So that world was destroyed. There's no saving entity that could help it. But when we come to the 10 generations between Noah and Abraham, it is a far more murky picture. It's not clear what went wrong. And the Mishnah does not describe for us what their evil was. The Mishnah just says, Ad shebo Avram Avinu v'notal schar kulo. Until the time of Abraham, Abraham came and he took the reward for everything. So what was going on? So there are different opinions. We'll review a few of them with you. What is the hallmark of the generation of the Tower of Babel? So the Torah tells us that. Sofa achad udvorim achodim. one language and, so to speak, the same vocabulary, the same words. On the surface, that should be a good thing. Well, we always speak in terms of unity. So here, everybody speaks the same. There's a lockstep of opinion regarding matters in the world. It should all be good. So the Mefarshim disagree. There are those who say that was a positive thing, and that by having different languages so that we cannot understand each other, somebody comes to me and speaks in Turkish or in, well, I guess even in English, I don't necessarily understand. So that should be viewed as a punishment. If everybody spoke the same language, maybe it would be a better world, a more peaceful world. There was a Jew that invented an international language, Esperanto, that the intellectuals in the beginning of the 20th century thought that it would be a panacea. But nothing came of it. But the idea is there. The idea is to have one universal language, and everyone should be able to communicate with another and be understood. So that opinion is that this was a positive. But what happened was they converted the positive into a negative. They took the one universal language and they used it for evil purposes. They said, Hova nivne lanu. Let us build for ourselves a city and a tower up to heaven, a skyscraper. So Rashi says their motives were evil. They said, we're going to show heaven. So the actuality of it was that it was maybe a positive thing, but how it was employed made it a negative thing. And that is a great lesson in life, that there are many things that if they are done in isolation and by themselves are very positive. They're tools that can enhance us, but they can also be converted into a negative thing. It depends on what the purpose was, what's the intent. And since the generation of the Tower of Babel, their intent was to rebel against God. So they wanted to make a unified society, that everybody spoke the same language, that all the papers were the same, that all the opinions were the same. But because of the fact that their intent was evil, all of this turned out to be negative, even though it could have been a positive trait. So that's one direction, how to look at the Dor HaMabul. The Dor HaFloga. They had learned a lesson from the Dor HaMabul, because Vatimaleor, it's chomos, means that everybody is doing what they want to do. There are no restrictions, there are no police, there's no justice. So therefore, Vatimaleor, it's chomos, becomes now a fully regimented society. No crime. criminals are punished on the spot. But the problem is, who defines who is a criminal? What is a crime? That is where their error lay. And that's why it says that Shabo Avram Avinu v'notal schar kulam. Avram Avinu came and he took the reward. The reward was Sofo achas dvorim achodim. They understood each other. And because they understood each other, Avram Avinu could persuade the world that there is a creator and a moral code. But what they did with that tool, that is where the crime lies. That's where the negativity arises. That's where the problem is. So that's one way of looking at the Dora Hafloga. And therefore the Dora Hafloga is not destroyed, but rather the situation is changed so that there will no longer be this ability that everyone will conform. Everyone will speak the same language. Now, we have experienced in our time, like in the 20th century, there were numerous experiments, and there still are such incidents that prevail, where a certain culture or a certain idea intends to impose itself upon others, which is what we call totalitarianism, whatever we call it. But that was communism, that was Nazism, that was fascism. That's the cancel culture of today. It's that we know better, and we're going to impose it on you. And if you disagree, we will destroy you. So Avram Avinu is thrown into the furnace because he does not agree with the culture of the time. And you cannot have exceptions to the culture, because the moment you have exceptions, then the power of the culture begins to diminish, and it has a world of different opinions and dissents and all sorts of problems. So the punishment of the generation of the Tower of Babel was that there was no longer any conformity. They could not speak the same language. It doesn't mean that they didn't know necessarily the same words and the same vocabulary, but it's not the same language. We have countless examples that everybody speaks in the name of freedom, in the name of progress. Yet we see that the worst things are done in the name of freedom and progress. The words become meaningless because of the interpretation that they are given by human behavior. So the punishment of the Dora Hafloga was that they no longer had the power of conformity. They could throw Avram Avinu in the furnace, but God is going to save him. That's what the Medrash really means here. You think you can force everybody to agree to you, everybody to think the way you think, to speak the way you speak. I'll show you that that's an impossibility. And that becomes obvious to any student of human nature and of human history. those of us who are blessed with family and with children, the children have their own minds. And there's a limit to what parents can enforce. That is what the Lord implanted in the world after the Dor HaFloga. That's what Avram Avinu realizes. So we'll see that later in the life of Avram Avinu. How does Avram Avinu tolerate Yishmael in his house? Yishmael is the antithesis of everything that Avram is. Avram is kind and gentle and hospitable. Yishmael is a murderer, a rapist. And yet Avram says, Lu Yishmael yicheh lefanecha. Levi Yishmael should live. Because Avram learns through his own experience that people are different. And you can't make people conform. And therefore, so to speak, honey captures more flies than vinegar. Inviting people, giving hospitality, caring about people, being gentle even towards your enemies, in the long run, is far more productive than trying to force conformity upon others. So the sin of the Dor HaFloga is that it used its ability to unify to make the world conform. And therefore its punishment is that there was no longer any ability for conformity. And any student of even elementary human history sees how that plays itself out. All of the attempts at conformity, no matter how well-intentioned, have always failed. Chazal say that's why the Jewish people were constructed from 12 tribes. It'd be much better to have one tribe, everybody together, one family. Because if you have 12 tribes, by human nature, you're going to have competitiveness, jealousy. If Yosef and the brothers would have all had the same mother, as they had the same father, so things would have gone differently. But the Rebbeinu Shalom did not want conformity. He wanted the ability that the brothers should live with Yosef, not that they should be Yosef, and not that Yosef should be them. That's a great lesson. And it's unfortunately an error that is repeated and repeated and repeated in families, in communities, in countries, in human relationships. So the Dor HaFloga represents a challenge that is with us at all times. The Dor HaMabul is it's an extreme. Timolei Oretz Chomos. So if we have a good police force and we give good education and times are fairly prosperous, etc., so that can be avoided. But the idea of forcing conformity, that's omnipresent. That's present all the time. And therefore the Meforshim say that's why it says Ad Shabo Avram Avinu v'not al schar kulam. Avram Avinu is the first example of an exceptional person, not the run-of-the-mill, different. The Novi says, Ki echad krosiv. He was unique. He's the only one. Do we like unique people? How do we respond to unique people? Well, that's the challenge of the Dor HaFloga. Now, there's a different stream looking at the Dor HaFloga, that everything was negative. That the Sofa Achas of Dvorim Achodim was also negative. And that, there's a political group in the world. It's been around a long time. It comes with different names. Today we call them anarchists. They're people that believe, so to speak, in no government. No, there cannot be anything like no government at all. But they believe that nobody has the right to impose anything on anybody else. And they believe it so strongly that they're willing to kill other people to enforce it. So, for instance, in the Great Spanish Civil War in the 1930s, a large portion of the anti-fascist army were anarchists. And in the United States today, there are groups of anarchists. The anarchists, to them, chaos is a fundamental human right. And therefore, that was the Dor HaMabul. The Dor HaMabul was that there's no right to be an anarchist, there's no right to rebel, there's no right to say no. And the fact that they all spoke the same language was a detriment and not a potential benefit for others. Now, the Meforshim agree and disagree. What was the language that they spoke? So there is a body of opinion amongst the Meforshim that the basic language in the world is Lashon HaKodesh, Hebrew. And there have been many scholarly papers written on this subject. We find that, for instance, almost amongst all languages in the world, the word for mother is always ma, a form of that sound. So it's ima, mama. There's certain sounds that are basic throughout the human race. So there are those experts in language who say that proves that we all came from a common tongue. And the question is, which was the tongue? And since the world was created b'Lashon HaKodesh, so then the natural inclination is to say that it was Hebrew itself. And Meforshim also point out that in order for the world, for the human race to spread out all over the world, the sounds of language must change. For instance, we have very good examples of that. English in the United States is not English in England, and English in England is not English in Scotland, and English in Scotland is not English in Australia, and English in Australia is not English in South Africa. Why are those differences present? If we all come from the same stock, so to speak. And why in Hebrew, amongst us, Chassidim, Galicianers speak Hebrew differently than the Lithuanian Jews, who speak it differently than the German Jews, who speak it differently than the Sephardic Jews. So the Meforshim point out that all of this is because the Lord scattered us. And because he scattered us culturally, atmospherically almost, we pick up a different nuance. Our ears hear the language, the word differently, and we respond that way differently. Again, is that a positive or a negative? A difference of opinion, and a difference of opinion until today, even in the general secular world. There's sometimes people with a heavy Australian accent find themselves hard to be understood in California, even though it's the same language. So all of this is the question mark regarding the Dor HaFloga. And what is obvious is that the Dor HaFloga was not destroyed, it was only scattered. That's what the Torah says. And it's scattered not only geographically, but it's scattered in time as well, so that it reappears every so often. Drives for universality in things. And the question of whether or not that is positive or negative always remains on the table, because there are different ways of looking at it. Avraham Avinu rises above the question. He says the universality of human beings is in the fact that we come from one creator. As long as we think that we come from different forms, that we evolved from different animals, that there were different gods, so then you'll never put Humpty Dumpty back together again. But if we realize, as the Navi says, we all have one antecedent. We're all the same. So then, even though there be differences of language and culture and ideas, there is a basic unity in human beings that will allow civilization to progress and move forward and bring itself to better times. So I want to thank you for listening this morning, and have a great Shabbat. Next week, we'll talk about Avraham Avinu solely. Thank you.
That's all.
What time is it?
Now it's 10:35.
Thank you.